Big Drive Energy Victory Monday afternoon. We're going to talk about the Sheffy of the Week again. This guy just keeps dominating our Sheffy of the Week. LPGA Tour purse increases. Pretty exciting for the ladies' side going into 2025. Patrick Reed, did he shoot a perfect round of golf? We'll discuss, as well as Luke Clanton. I've got some Luke Clanton facts that I will read off to Mitchell and see if he can guess how much money this guy would have made this year. Also, finalists for 2024 PGA Tour awards are out. Joel Dahmen, People's Champ, sneaking back into the PGA Tour in 2025. We're going to recap the Australian PGA Championship, and we have Mulligan Monday. All right, let's tee it up. Big Drive Energy Monday afternoon. What's up, brother? How was your weekend? It was a sports-filled weekend for sure. Last week of the PGA Tour, it is now officially over. Now it's officially silly season in golf with the PNC and the other different events. But how was your weekend? How was the football? How was the just whatever you're doing out there? I guess it's snowing out there now. You don't have this great weather anymore.
Now, well, it's not really snowing, but it's definitely gotten colder. It feels a little bit more like fall, which is actually nice. But I took a little hot boy walk earlier today, and it was like 52 degrees. But it's just so weird because I'm just so unfamiliar with the humidity that I was sweating, and it was 52 degrees out, and I just had a hoodie on and like some joggers and just a regular hat, no beanie or anything, and I was still sweating my ass off. So it's just a little humid out here, which is definitely different than Colorado. But weekend was great. Football was awesome. Friday night we went out to a Christmas like pop-up bar that was super cool. It was called Calandria's, and like out here in New Jersey, there's just I didn't know, I've never seen this before, but it was basically an Italian restaurant and like bakery that was the size of like a whole grocery store. There was like a whole bar area that probably sat 80 people. Then there was a whole dining room that sat probably 150 people. And then there was just a whole other area that was just, they sold all of their pastas and their desserts, everything like that. It was massive. It legit looked like a shopping mall, and it was just one giant Italian place. I think it's called Calandra's or something like that. But then, so the food was awesome. The drinks were great. I tried a bunch of different seasonal drinks. I had like this caramel apple martini. That would have been right up your alley. You would have loved that shit. And then we went to a bar after, and they had live music. And I'm not shitting you. This lead singer, so it was just like a cover band of older dudes, probably. There's a few younger ones, but mostly in their 60s, I would say. And the whole bar was filled with like middle-aged to older people. It kind of reminded me of Tailgate back in Parker, Colorado. The classic people in their 40s and 50s tearing it up. But this lead singer was unbelievable. He was legitimately like Rodney Dangerfield. He was dancing all over the fucking stage. He was just jamming out. He was pouring sweat. I was like, this guy's got to be on some sort of drugs because he was just tearing it up. He actually had to change his shirt mid-set because he was going so fucking hard. He sweat right through his shirt. But that was also a blast. I was like, this guy's my fucking hero. Like, I think it just goes to show you as you get older, you give less of a fuck and you just truly try to enjoy yourself and you don't care what people think. And it usually ends up working out pretty well that way. So I was like, I want to learn. I want to learn from this guy. I want to be more like this guy. So that was a good time. And then obviously the football, the Broncos almost tried to fucking give it away. We were texting yesterday. The Raiders just always give us fits, especially up until our new Prince Bo. We have not been very good against the Raiders the last 5 or 6 years, whatever. Uh, so finally, nice to get a win in Las Vegas, and some other upsets in the NFL that were fun to watch. Like the morning slate was so much fun, and you looked at it initially, and you're like, "This fucking sucks," but it was a blast. So I have no complaints. The weekend was great.
Yeah, legitimately during the witching hour yesterday, I felt like that SpongeBob meme where all those math equations were like flying around his head and he can't figure out where he is. I was trying to like I'm having some real TV issues and we're ordering a Wi-Fi extender because I'm done with this. Basically, my two TVs downstairs, which are kind of far away from the Wi-Fi modem or whatever you want to call it itself, my two TVs are really slow. And the big TV is better, which makes it nice. But the littler TV that's hanging up on the wall has some serious buffering issues. So I'm trying to like keep track of that TV, trying to watch Red Zone on the big TV. And then I'm seeing stuff on the big TV that's coming up before the one on the little TV. So then I'm exiting out, trying to get back in. It just kind of was a mess in general. I don't like when my streaming is great and it's awesome to be able to have so many options. You know, we grew up cable boys, cable TV, pretty trusty, unless there's like snow on the fucking satellite or something. But it's now streaming is great, but sometimes like the Wi-Fi just is not cooperating and it'll be like mid play and you just see the little circle in the middle of the screen and you're like, I want to lose it every time that happens. So I had to fight with the Wi-Fi and the TV a little bit yesterday, but overall, yeah, that witching hour was incredible. And then a win from our boys always makes a good afternoon. And then I went to Botanic Garden Lights last night. Great spot. Love seeing a little lights. I have realized though that lights, when you have a kid that can walk, you don't see half the lights. I spent the entire time with my arms out and my head down looking at this concrete. He almost went into the water a couple times. Like it was just I it was not it's not as enjoyable for the actual lights part of it. So a few times I like picked him up and put him in the light, like put his face to the light so he could see some of this like stuff in the trees. But overall I just felt like I was kind of chasing him around with two hands down and not really taking in the light scenario.
Have you considered like a chest harness for him? Is that inhumane? Is that
I don't know. I have considered it, and I don't know if it's frowned upon or not. I am not sure what the consensus is on babies with backpacks and leashes attached to them because I went on a walk today. Dog had a leash, and I really wish I would have had a leash for the child too because it would have made my walk much more enjoyable. I mean, the walks are for him; they're not for me. But when I have to stop and turn around, and then he like is getting very look at you and do exactly what you don't want him to do. And so he started running back out towards the street, and I was like, oh, "Okay, this is not it, bud. You're gonna have to listen up." And he wants to grab every car handle that he walks by, and I'm like, "Dude, we can't be doing this. No, thank you."
He is very good at opening things. Anything that has a handle, he just wants to grab it. I honestly don't think it's like inhumane to. I don't know if inhumane only applies to animals or if it also applies to humans. But I don't think it's out of pocket to like put your. I was gonna say put your dog, put your child on some sort of leash, chest harness type of deal because obviously you want him to walk. You don't want to carry him. You want him to tire himself out. But at the same time, you can't just helicopter the kid and make sure he is constantly staying in a certain area, especially like you said, dude, he could whiskey throttle it straight into the water and then fucking Sawdogs doesn't know how to swim yet. He's cooked in there. So it's just like I would be so stressed out to take him anywhere if I didn't know, or you just chip him, just put a little fucking chip in his bum.
Well, that won't help him from being in the water. I mean, I'm not worried about losing him. I'm just worried about not having him do as I ask, which it will happen
Yeah.
for the next 17 years, probably.
Yeah, just get used to that because that's just being a parent by the sounds of it. But also, I want to give us a shout out if we want to talk a little fantasy football and a little pick six. We hit a fucking pick six this week for the first time all year. So let's give ourselves a round of applause. Yeah, me and Spencer.
Pick
Holy
six for the
shit! It
boys. We did it.
shouldn't be that fucking hard, man. And uh, there's a couple there's a couple you had right. There's a couple that I talked you off of, but ultimately we landed in the right place. You want to take the Dolphins, which was free money. I didn't want to take the Dolphins. I wanted to take who was it? Who did we take out and put in?
I don't remember. Did you want
Was
to
it?
take?
We took the Seahawks, the Lions, the Eagles. We already had the Browns hit.
Packers?
The
You wanted the
Buccaneers.
Packers.
Oh yes, the Packers.
Buccaneers.
That was kind of a no-brainer. I feel like the Packers. So let's revisit this topic one more time because it's neither of our teams, but it's our significant others' teams. Are you ready to admit that the Eagles are better than the 49ers?
This year, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this that's all there is. 5 years ago, I also think the Eagles were better because I think that no, they won the Super Bowl in 2016. But yeah, the 49ers are the weirdest football team. And obviously they didn't have their starting quarterback yesterday, but how are they under 500? It just doesn't make sense. Like they almost need a addition by subtraction type of Buffalo Bills style move to get rid of some of this diva shit they got going on because they have all the talent in the world and they just can't like get out of their own way. It's weird.
Yeah, they're in a weird spot right now. A lot of their main guys have been in and out of the lineup. Now they finally get Christian McCaffrey back, but it may be too late. But also that division is a mess. Every team is 6-5 or 5-6. So
Well, yesterday you were like, or before, I'm sorry, on Saturday before we locked in our picture, like the 49ers like can't lose. And I'm like, well, they can, and they have. That's what they've been doing, and they're going to continue to do that. Like, it's just so wild that we could talk about them not being in the playoffs. But I will say that it sounds like the Dolphins are kind of our closest shot, like closest team that could possibly bounce us out of the playoffs. So I'm definitely rooting against the Dolphins, but they've got a few games against teams that you would think would give them a good matchup, but they just all fucking suck right now. Like I think they play the Jets maybe twice. They have a couple other games from teams that like you thought would be good and just aren't good. So there's a decent chance the Dolphins like run the table because they have 6 losses right now. So I think they're 5-6. So they have 6 games left. I think they need to almost run the table. And we need to if we win 3 games, if we win 10 games, I think we're in the clear. But what do you think?
Yeah, if the Broncos win 10 games, they're probably in the clear, but there's also a chance too that they could be 10-7 and lose one of the games to the Bengals, who also finished 10-7, who then will also make the playoffs over us. So I just hope the Dolphins lose this weekend, Thanksgiving, the nightcap. The Thanksgiving schedule is incredible, by the way, because the morning game is really intriguing. And by the way, that you wanted to be on the Vikings or you wanted to be on the Bears. Maybe you kept going back and forth on that, which turned out you would have got lucky. We would have hit it, but that was an insane finish. But the Bears, I think it's Bears, Lions.
It's Bears. Yes, Bears, Lions, and then Cowboys, Giants.
Yeah, and then you could take the middle of the day off, not watch Cowboys, Giants, and then tune back in for Packers, Dolphins. So very in on the Thanksgiving slate. Like I can not watch Cooper Rush versus Tommy Cutlets at midday. Real lock in on the family time.
Shout out to yeah, there you go. That's the perfect, like, let's sit down, let's eat, I'll be engaged. And then after that, you're just cooked. But shout out to the Cowboys. That was an absolutely wild game as well yesterday. Did not see them beating the Commanders, but the Commanders are falling off a pretty hard slope currently. Have you seen the stats on Cliff Kingsbury and like his record the first half of the year versus the second half of the year? Mind you, just the OC, but still.
No, I would imagine it's bad because like 3 or 4 years ago, or maybe even 2 years ago, the Cardinals started out like 9-0, and then they didn't even make the playoffs, or they were like the last team to get in after you started like 9-0 or 9-1, and that was under Kingsbury.
Yeah, I want to say something like his last 4 or 5 years in the NFL, he's been a combined. He's basically averaged like 2 wins and 5 losses the last 7 weeks of every year. So his teams historically have fallen off a pretty hard cliff. And unfortunately, I mean, I played Terry McLaurin in one of my fantasy teams, and if it wasn't for that last crazy catch down in the final minutes, where he got in the end zone, he would have had like 6 points. He ended up, I think that was around like a 14-point play or 16-point play. But their offensive weapons, and Brian Robinson hosed me as well. So that was all around not good. And by the way, I haven't hit a single touchdown parlay all season. I'm still waiting on one of those. And you know what's funny is every time I enter one of them, they just get more and more outrageous. Like I think by the end of yesterday, I had $5 to win 12,000 on like a 12 legger. And I'm like, oh yeah, this will fucking hit. Like this is realistic. And it's basically just throwing money away. Like I'm better off taking that $5 and doing anything else with it. Even if I wipe my ass with it, it would get me more value than what I'm doing with it in the sports book, because it's fucking bad.
Yeah, the touchdown parlays are so much fun as you keep adding and you see the odds keep going up and up, and you're like, oh, this guy's got to score, this guy's got to score, and you hit like 3 out of 8, and you're like, oh, that was fun. Yesterday was a weird day though. Yesterday was like a not everybody's scoring that's supposed to be scoring type of day. Like the Chiefs' first 2 touchdowns are Noah Gray, like it's very like not. It wasn't chalky touchdowns yesterday for sure.
And it's just so hard to pick the non-chalk touchdowns because it's fucking just I picked Devon Vele from the Broncos because I'm like, he never goes to his big guys. And then, of course, Cortland Sutton is the only one that scores touchdowns yesterday for us. So that was a treat. But I want to give a shout out to Baker Mayfield as well, because he is so much fun to watch, dude. When he hit the Italian on him,
yeah, it was so vigorous too. He was so hyped up. Yeah,
he was doing it so hard, like it looked like he was trying to milk a cow or something. But
well, it's because he was like making it very apparent what he was doing. He couldn't just be like chill and do it. He was like had to like absolutely make sure that all the fans saw what he was doing.
I almost think he paused and tried to like do it again even harder to like, because I think it almost looked like for a split second he was flipping everyone off, like just holding his hands up and just birding everyone. So I think then he was like, no, I'm doing the Italian thing. But yeah, he definitely was not super Italian about it. But then did you see that video of him running down the field and throwing that block for Bucky Irving?
I watched it live.
That was so fucking electric. He's like talking to Bucky Irving behind him in real time. He's like, where do you want me? Like,
yeah.
And then he sees the dude behind him and just fucking threw, like almost like a reverse hit in hockey, just fucking checks this dude, gets Bucky like another 10 yards. He's just the epitome of like, he doesn't take a play off. Every single play, he's like frantic at all times. Like there's nothing relaxed about what Baker Mayfield does. It feels like he's always under pressure in the pocket, like always. Have you seen that video on Twitter of that dude mixing cocktails? And it looks like he's going really fast, but he's just like moving his head around really fast.
No.
Have you seen this?
No.
Like he's making like 4 cocktails. I think it's like an Indian video or something. And like he's just making he's just making cocktails like a regular speed, but his head's like jetting around. That's what I feel like Baker Mayfield does at all times. And then you just feel like when he ran that one in, he fucking gets plowed in the end zone. The ball shoots straight up in the air to the Giants. I was like, oh my God, if that ball came out, because that would just be so Baker. Like nothing about it is graceful, but he just goes, he plays with his fucking hair on fire at all times. And I don't know, as a football coach, hey, you could ask for anything more than that, because win, lose, or draw, you're getting 100% out of the dude.
Yeah, I want him to win a Super Bowl at some point in his career so bad. Like he deserves it. Imagine
how shit-faced he would be. Like he would fall into the river Tom Brady style if it was with the Buccaneers, and that would be unbelievable.
Yeah, Baker is a national treasure. Let's wrap up the football talk and give our Sheffy of the week. It's not official, but I think this guy has won it like at least 3 times this year, if not 4. What a steal in fantasy for those that have him. But this week's Sheffy is going to, once again, Saquon Barkley, running back for the Philadelphia Eagles. Every time he has a game like he had yesterday, they're memes of the Giants owner resurfaced where he's like, I'm not going to be able to sleep if he goes to Philly. And then Joe Sheen, who I thought was really cool in that Hard Knocks in the offseason. Like that was almost more fun to watch Hard Knocks style for me than like the in-season or the team one with the players. Seeing like what goes through GM's head, where they're targeting, what they're doing, the numbers, all that stuff is more interesting to me personally. And I actually like Joe Sheen a lot. And he's going to get fired here really quick. But Saquon had 26 carries for 255, 2 touchdowns, 4 catches for 47 yards, and potentially ruined one of my fantasy weeks because I checked my fantasy scores after the afternoon games. I had like a 56-point lead on Ryder. I thought I was going to clip him, just absolutely destroy him. Now I'm down 5, and I've got Quentin Johnston versus Cameron Dicker. And I need one of those Quentin Johnston like 40-yard bombs from Herbert. Like Ravens defense, is not very good. So I'm really hoping for some sort of a shootout tonight between the Chargers and the Ravens, where Herbert's pushing the ball down the field. Also hoping Ladd McConkey doesn't play for multiple reasons, just because that, and I just don't like the Chargers. But we're also tied with the Ravens, so it's kind of a CF right now of where this is all going in terms of the Broncos. But I had a 99% chance of winning my fantasy until Saquon Barkley and Puka Nacua kicked off on Sunday Night Football. And it was just a barrage. And then it was a mess of just prevent defense and Saquon scoring in the fourth quarter with 2 minutes left. Like, that should not happen. None of that should happen.
Yeah. No, I agree. First of all, I have Ladd McConkey going tonight. I'm down by 8 points. He has J.K. Dobbins. I have Ladd McConkey. So I'm really hoping the Ravens shut down the run and then Ladd just fucking pops off. But I wouldn't mind. Wait, so you're telling me the Ravens are 7-5? Is that real?
If they lose tonight, yes.
Okay, so they're 7-4 going into tonight.
If they lose tonight, they have the same record as we do.
That is absurd, because the way everybody talked about the Ravens earlier this year, like, are they the best team in the NFL? I actually did hear, I think it was it was Bill Belichick. He said the biggest enemy of the Ravens is the Ravens. And it honestly feels like they beat themselves half the time, because they really shouldn't lose to very many teams, but feels like they do. But yeah, I mean, Saquon just fucking popped off. He's insane. And so I kind of lost out because I have Jalen Hurts, I think, in almost every fantasy league. And he's always at least good for 1 rushing tutty and a couple of passing tutties. He only got me 15 points last night because Saquon just fucking ran for more yards than most teams gain in an entire game. So Saquon kind of ate up all the yardage, but honestly, he kind of deserves it, because I think Jalen's got like 8 or 10 rushing touchdowns this year, all from like the 1 yard line. So those could be a lot of Saquon's numbers, but at the same time, Saquon is making as much money as, like, that's what's cool, is when guys are just in it for the win. Like, Saquon's not like, oh, he's taking my touches. That's how you can tell a football team actually cares about one another versus they're all trying to get their own. You know, they're always thinking about their next contract. It's like Saquon's like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to help the team. And it was just a good watch. I mean, the Eagles are a wagon. I think an Eagles Lions NFC Championship game would be so electric.
Yeah, it would be. There's some juggernauts in both leagues right now. NFL is getting to be the really fun time. So this is the part of the podcast where we flip over to golf. Mitchell usually has something to say. He doesn't this time. So we're going to flip to golf, and we're going to start with the ladies and the LPGA Tour. They are undergoing a more than $4 million purse increase total for next year. Total purses of a record-setting $127.5 million for 2025. And there's some new tournaments as well for the LPGA Tour. They're returning to Mexico and Riviera Maya Open in Cancun. And they're also going to the Black Desert Championship in Utah, which is the same place the PGA Tour just played this fall. Really cool course. I played it on the sim, no big deal. Shot 1 under on the front 9 from the medium tees, if you will. But it's cool to see the LPGA Tour growing and paying these ladies more money as well, just like the PGA Tour has been doing and trying to do for the last couple of years. I mean, I don't know if it's just that the news is more prevalent nowadays. But I feel like money in terms of these professional sports is just going to get to a silly point. And we think it's silly now. And what we think is silly, it's almost like the stock market or Bitcoin or something. Like, we think it's silly now that Bitcoin's at 99K when I thought it was silly. It was at 43K. And I was like, I'm not buying any more of this. And now I look back and I'm like, wow, that was stupid. Like, our quarterback's going to be making 100 mil here in
Yeah.
10, 15, 20 years, 100 mil a year. Is that going to be the new baseline? And it's so 10 of the tournaments had a slight increase in prize money. All but 2 tournaments have at least $2 million purses, which is great. 10 of the tournaments have prize money of over 3 million or more. And the FM championship at TPC Boston purse is all the way up to 4.1 million for the ladies. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense, and you cannot tell me that. So we've discussed this somewhat at length. We've kind of engagement farm this entire Nelly Corda situation, but you can't tell me that women's basketball growing and now women's soccer growing, women's golf is growing. There's such an untapped market for all of these sponsors and for these networks and stuff to think about it. Like, it was similar to the NFL tapping into the female market last year with Taylor Swift, and think of the amount of money that the NFL made just due to tapping into a different base of fans, basically. So I think that the LPGA market is growing quite a bit. They're definitely getting bigger sponsors. And you can't tell me Nelly Corda isn't a big reason for that too. She is an icon of the sport. Her bank account just went up $1 million by them announcing the purse increase, because she's going to win probably 3-4 times next year at least, if not more. So yeah, I mean, it's well deserved and it's awesome. Like you said, it blows my mind just the money that's in sports, and somehow, like, the PGA Tour just made 50 or 60 million dollars a year last year. They're like, oh yeah, we'll increase all the purses by like $1 million or $2 million. Where I remember when a PGA Tour card used to be worth like 500 grand, 600 grand. And I'm like, God, could you imagine making 500 or 600 grand? Now it's legitimately, I want to say triple that. I want to say it's 1.5, between 1.5 and 2 million is like minimum to like make your tour card, keep your tour card. So you're making at least a couple $1 million to play on tour. And that is if you're like number 125 in that whole thing, which we will talk about later. But it, like you said, the money just is insane. When I sold my house, I was like, how is my house worth over $500,000? But 2 years ago, but when I bought it, I was like, no way this house is worth $375,000 what I paid for it. And then 2 years later, everybody wants to pay. And do you know what else I find funny as well? Is just the psychology of the human brain, where you see something that's, just for round number's sake, you see something that's $400,000, you're like, whatever. You see it, and then all of a sudden it's $600,000. You almost want it more. Like, people actually see a higher price, especially like in the stock market. That's what everybody falls victim to. They see a stock going up and up and up, and they get this FOMO, and then they buy, and then the stock goes down. Whereas you need to obviously try to buy when it's low. It's kind of a stupid thing to say, but you know what I mean. Everybody gets this FOMO as the price keeps going up. Whereas if they would have bought years ago when nobody else was really interested in it, they would be reaping the benefits. So yeah, there's definitely an element of that. And if you could buy like stock in the LPGA, like, imagine if how cool would that be if all major sports were publicly traded? Like, what if you could buy stock in the NFL or the NBA or the PGA Tour? Like, what do you think would be the NFL's got to just be the hottest running stock in pretty much all of sports, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the biggest eyeball wise in the entire country. No matter what, when they have a standalone game, that is the most watched event of the night, pretty much every single time, whether it's Monday night, Thursday night, Sunday night. They own those days.
For sure. And I will say that, like, the LPGA and the WNBA, they're like those tech startups that are kind of small and they're starting to grow, but they're growing at a very rapid rate because they have a lot of room to grow. So I would definitely be buying stock in kind of all of women's sports right now if I could. Like it feels like there's definitely a momentum turn where people are now focusing like their advertising, and maybe I just didn't pay as close of attention, but now ESPN, and I will say it's part of the networks. Like somebody commented on the TikTok and said the networks are kind of like shoving it down our throat. And I think that's part of it too. But if that gets eyeballs on it, then why wouldn't you do it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and so the Tour Championship is the CME group, a Chicago-based group, and they extended their sponsorship of this race to CME Globe for the last 2 years, or for 2 more years through 2027. And their purse on the Ladies Tour Championship, the winner, the purse is more than $11 million, and $4 million goes to the winner, which I believe was Nelly. I'm pretty sure this past week, and that is the second biggest payoff in all of women's sports. What do you think is first in terms of a single payoff in women's sports?
It's got to be something soccer. I would believe.
No, it's
Uh,
actually tennis. The WTA. Coco Gauff won $4.8 million earlier this month. So that was the
no
single biggest
shit.
payoff in women's sports right now.
So, but is that in one event?
Yeah, that was just like probably the US Open, I would imagine.
Holy shit, that is insane. I did not know. I was not familiar with tennis's game. That's huge.
Yeah, it's unreal.
Holy
Especially
cow.
with where like double like you hear of them doubling of the size of a purse for the Tour Championship. That's some serious money. Like, yes, going up in 2-3 million in all these tournaments or a couple 100,000, it is a lot, but relatively speaking, it's not. But when you double your purse for a Tour Championship, I mean, that's where you get to the silly money, especially on the PGA Tour as well. When you're winning the FedEx Cup and you're winning, $18 million, 10 million plus the tournament, it just gets into silly stuff. Let's stick
Well,
with. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking of that, should we talk about the Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year finalists?
Yeah, we can just parlay it right into that. So PGA Tour awards were announced, the finalists for the PGA Tour awards, and I feel like a lot of this stuff, I don't know, the finalist thing is kind of lame to me. It's like when you go to the Heisman Trophy ceremony, especially most years, you know who's winning it. Like the other two guys are just there for shits and gigs, if you will. And I feel like that's kind of how these two awards are. Maybe you have a different thought on it. So PGA Tour Player of the Year, of course, Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, and Xander Schauffele. Now, up until Scotty won the Tour Championship and finally got that nail into his repertoire, if you will,
That monkey off his back
that monkey
for
off his back, that nail in his coffin of like ending Xander Schauffele's great season is like there was an argument there. There was an argument of who had a better season because Xander won a couple majors and Scotty did not. But I think that Scotty Scheffler is going to win that pretty handily. And then Rookie of the Year nominees, Nick Dunlap, Max Grieserman, Jake Knapp, and Matthew Pavon. Now, all good years. Pavon, I felt like, was really good early on, kind of fell off, like the Jaden Daniels of that scenario. Nick Dunlap was really good early. Did something in amateurs hasn't done since Phil Mickelson, and then turned pro, was a story all year, and then won again. Max Grieserman had a great year, and then Jake Knapp won as well. But I feel like Nick Dunlap's probably the minus 800 for that. I would say it's pretty overwhelming favorite.
Yeah, I would agree. And honestly, if you want to go comparisons, like you just compared Jaden Daniels to Pavon, which it's also funny. Like I want to get your opinion on this because Pavon, he's obviously a PGA Tour rookie, but he's in like his early 30s. So it's kind of similar to the NHL where you're only, if you play, I want to say it's like 10, 15 games, something like that. You have to get to a certain number of games played to be eligible. But like on the PGA Tour, it's not. It doesn't matter how old you are. It's if it's your first year on the PGA Tour. So Pavon is definitely the oldest in that group. But I would almost compare Nick Dunlap to Bo Nix, like without the first win, because the first win is obviously what springboarded him to get his PGA Tour card. But then after that, it felt like he missed like 5 or 6 straight cuts. I'm like, is this guy ever going to fucking play well again? Now that he turned pro, it's all such a whirlwind, but he seemed like he really got his feet underneath him there towards the middle of the year. And then towards the end of the year, he almost won in Detroit. He had a couple other really high finishes, and I think he ended up making 14 out of 22 cuts. But I want to say like 4 or 5 of those missed cuts had to come in like his first 7 or 8 events on the PGA Tour. So he definitely got it sorted out there towards the end. And obviously he's a super talented dude. So yeah, I got to say you win twice your rookie season. And I know age shouldn't come into it, but he's 20 years old. He was born in fucking 2020 or 2004. Like that is just so absurd to even wrap my head around. And that the fact that he's out there just competing on the PGA Tour. And then you look at guys like Luke Clanton, who is number 93 in the world now. He's got like, I want to say 5 or 6 top 10s in the PGA Tour events he's played in. He finished his second this last week. And I guess the guy's ball striking statistics are just otherworldly. Like he hits it as far and as straight as pretty much anybody combined on the PGA Tour. So
Yeah,
no wonder
let's get into Luke Clanton a little bit, because I did some personal research on Mr. Luke Clanton and the tweet you're talking about. So this is what was from PGA Tour Sean Martin on X. Long tweet. He clearly has the verified account, so he can write a book here. But he said he reminds him of a young Morikawa. He would rank second to Scotty Scheffler in strokes gained approach if he'd played enough rounds this season to qualify. He would lead the tour in greens percentage hit if he could qualify at 74.4, and he'd be third in strokes gained off the tee. He's driving it as long as Wyndham Clark and as straight as Ches Reavie. He's averaging 314 yards off the tee, which is top 10 in driving distance, while hitting 68% of his fairways. That would rank him top 15 in accuracy. And Luke Clanton, so he plays a cut predominantly. He's just got an all-around good long game, where he said it reminds him of Morikawa is like the flagging irons. He's just going to make hay. You can hit a little squirrely off the tee. You can not be the best chipper, not be the best putter, but if you're hitting consistently good, really good iron shots, you're going to make a lot of money on the PGA Tour. So let's talk about the money that Luke Clanton hasn't made, because as Mitchell spoke to, he's an amateur. So he has, let me pull this back up so I'm exactly correct. So this year he's started 8 events on the PGA Tour. How many cuts made do you think he has in 8 events on the PGA Tour as an amateur?
like 6.
7. He's only missed 1 cut. How many runner-up finishes does he have in 8 events?
I'll say 2.
2. And he's got how many top 10s?
I'll say 4.
4. Exactly right. So he's in 25% of the tournaments he plays in, he's been second place as an amateur. This is an amateur golfer here. Second, 2 runner-ups, and then 4 times he's been in the top 10. So I went through and looked at the purses, because obviously he's making $0 off of purses. Of course, this guy's probably got sponsors coming at him from everywhere. So he played in the U.S. Open, Rocket Mortgage, John Deere, ISCO, Wyndham Championship, Procore, and RSM. How much money do you think he left on the table this year by not being a professional golfer?
I got to say 2 runner-ups and 4 top 10s. I would bet probably $1.6 million.
That is very close. He was at $1.8 million, $1.809775 million that he ended up with on the PGA Tour, which would have put him, had he played he played 8 events, and his first ever PGA Tour sanctioned event was the U.S. Open. He missed out on $712,000 at the John Deere Classic. He missed out on $323K at the Wyndham and $450K this past weekend at the RSM. But that would have put him just those 8 events would have put him right in between Charlie Hoffman and Ben Coles at 91, 92 on the PGA Tour money list from playing 8 events. These guys are playing 26 events, 24, 25, something like that. It just goes to show you how good this guy is. And like, if I had to put stock up in a player for like rookie of the year next year, maybe I'll see if we can bet that already. I would imagine this kid, I mean, rolling on what we talked about Nick Dunlap and what he did and how incredible that was. And that's not taking anything like Nick. I'd still take Nick Dunlap today over Luke Clanton. But the fact that Luke Clanton's putting these stats on the table and on paper, playing 8 events, he hasn't won yet, but 2 runner-up finishes and 4 top 10s in 8 events those are Scotty Scheffler type numbers with flipping the 2 runner-ups to maybe 2 wins. And then it'd be an unreal number where he'd be at. But I can't really comprehend him playing as good as he is right now with playing minimal events on the PGA Tour and what he's going to look like when he's actually a pro.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be absurd when he actually gets out there. Speaking of, I don't know. So these PGA Tour U rankings, I don't know exactly how they calculate it, but it sounds kind of fucked up because he's now ranked like 18th or 19th in the PGA Tour U rankings, and like the top 25 get a PGA Tour card. So I'm like, how exactly he? Like you said, he's got 2 runner-up finishes on the PGA Tour. If he were to win, he'd get an automatic 2-year exemption. So maybe that's what he's holding out for. He's like, I guess I just got to win. But how is he not number 1 on the PGA Tour U list? Because they do take PGA Tour starts into account for PGA Tour U to get your card. So it's like, how is this dude? He's actually out on the PGA Tour, and there's kids playing collegiate golf that are leapfrogging him in the rankings, and he's out finishing in the top 10 in half of the events he's played in on the PGA Tour. Like, that does not make any sense unless he's just played like shit in actual college events. Like, maybe he just thinks the fucking college events are snooze fest now that he's spent a couple months out on the PGA Tour. He's like, what am I even doing out here? So I just don't know exactly how those rankings work, but you got to think the guy's going to have his card come next season. I just don't understand how he wouldn't.
Yeah, and it must be before you said what you said about them getting PGA Tour U points for playing actual PGA Tour events. That's what maybe is hurting him. So maybe the points just aren't weighted as high because he took essentially maybe not every single week of these weeks playing college golf, but 8 weeks on the PGA Tour. That's 2 full months of a 6 to 7 month, maybe 8 month season where he's not getting those points for playing in college. But yeah, if he's like 18th or 19th, he must just not be. He must not feel the competition levels enough for him when he goes and plays on a college golf course against some SEC peeps or something.
Well, so he goes to Florida State, but I will say that I know a few dudes from Florida State, and I've heard it's a pretty big party school. So maybe he just gets after it while he's at school, doesn't really give a shit, and maybe the PGA Tour is a good thing for him. It keeps him dialed in. There's nobody to party with out on the PGA Tour, so then he just goes and lives it up down at FSU. I'm sure he's one of the most popular kids. You know, golf's becoming a very popular thing for younger people, so maybe he just is hitting the bottle a little too hard. Maybe he's into the extracurriculars.
Luke Clanton doesn't seem like a guy that fits that mold to me, but I guess you never know, right?
He gives me kind of a Kevin Kisner, obviously a lot better, but he gives me that Southern kind of like, I could see him with a Vineyard Vine shirt and some boat shoes on, just absolutely blacked out with a big dip in his lip. He just strikes me as one of those Southern guys with the sunglasses with the croquis on, just totally fratted out. And maybe I'm stereotyping him, but I could definitely see him getting after it.
That wouldn't be the first time we've stereotyped on this show. All right, let's move to our last PGA Tour topic of the week, and Mr. Joel Dahmen, the guy on the thumbnail of this YouTube. Once again, if you're just listening to this podcast via the ears and the audio, check us out on YouTube, Big Drive Energy Golf. Get to see our beautiful faces every single week on an amazing screen of YouTubery, and hear us as well. So check that out, Big Drive Energy Golf. But Joel Dahmen is one of the fan favorites. Of course, his appearance on Full Swing was huge for his notoriety. Just became a funny guy, and then he, went through some serious ups and downs, which were well documented on Full Swing. Made him feel really human to you, because I feel like that's something where sports in general are going to, where they're getting athletes mic'd up or getting more behind the scenes of their lives, and it kind of shows that human element that they still have, because you only see them on a TV screen, so you don't really feel that connection to them. But when you realize, like, Joel Dahmen he was going stroller shopping right around the same time I was, and so you're like, yeah, they do the same shit we do. They're just very good at golf and always on TV and making what appears like millions of dollars. But he began the final round of the RSM Classic just outside of the projected top 125. Started 5 under through 6, ended up shooting 64, didn't make a bogey, and his whole season came down to 2 putting from 50 feet on number 18, and he made a 6-footer for par to finish at 124. And the PGA Tour is so cool to me, because you have so many different levels of these stories. You have the stories of the guys that have been on tour for 10 years and then they finally win one, like a guy like Peter Malnati this past year. Guy that has no business winning on the PGA Tour, goes out and wins. And yeah, it wasn't a full field or signature event or whatever, but guys like that. You have the guys that are firmly on the PGA Tour. Like when our boy Hubs wins a PGA Tour event in 2025, it'll be something where the guys that you don't normally think about them, because they're usually making the cut on the number just by a few. They're top 20 in it, top 40 in it, making a good paycheck, making a living, but not like dominating. There's that level. And then there's the level of these guys that are trying to fight and claw just to stay on the PGA Tour. We talked about our boy qualifying for the DP World Tour and what that took, getting through 3 stages of Q school. And now you have a guy like Joel Dahmen, who's been a pretty good player, decent player relative to PGA Tour standards. And he's sitting there on the last day and needs to shoot 64 in order to keep his tour card for 2025. And then obviously next year he said he had a quote about, I never want this to happen again. Well, next year he's going to have to jump up at least 24 spots through the entire 2025 season to get up into the top 100, which are the only guaranteed cards. But I think it's cool when you have a guy that a lot of people know hopping up into the top 125 and being like a story where it's like, this isn't always easy, but that 6-footer was his life at that point, a massive difference and change in his life.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the PGA Tour is so cool because there's so many different kinds of players, but we've talked about it a few times. Unfortunately, they don't always cover every kind of player. They only cover the top players that are playing the best that week, not the guy that's fighting for his tour card and shit like that, which is where people like Monday Q Info come in and do such a good job. But I just looked at Joel Dahmen's season stats. Guess how many top 10s he had all year?
1.
Yeah. He had 1 top 10 in 30
yeah.
events.
In 30 events?
And 4 top 25s. So
what
I
was
think
the
he
top
made
10 in? Did you see?
I did not. But then I looked at Hubs's year because Hubs is the king of making the cut and then finishing, somewhere between not the top 25 and the cut line. And so Dahmen made $1.34 million this year. So that, I guess, is the minimum money you can make to keep your tour card, which is lower than I honestly thought. But Hubs ended up making $2.75 million this year, which is pretty fucking good. Hubs had third place finishes, another top 10, and 7 top 25s in 30 events. So there's definitely levels to it. Like Joel Dahmen is the oh god, there's when you put 3 names together, this guy is this guy of this guy. I can't really Joel Dahmen is a poor man's Mark Hubbard. So maybe he can play a little bit more consistent golf. And maybe this was a little bit of a wake-up call for him. Like, it definitely seemed like he was a little casual in it's so hard to say. We're sitting here judging from a distance. You don't really know what he does day in, day out, but he seemed very, very casual about his PGA Tour status, and kind of, I didn't know if it was like assuming he was always going to have it, or he's just one of those guys that just, he genuinely doesn't think he belongs, which is also crazy. But at this point, like you said, he's got to really put it into gear because this year is not going to look like next year. And if he plays the same way, he's going to be back on the Corn Ferry Tour. And at that point, it's you never want to step backwards like that. When Dahmen feels like his best golf was behind him, hopefully I'm wrong about that. Hopefully he can find his form back. And golf is a very fickle game, so hopefully he can figure that out.
Yeah, speaking of being a fickle game, and let's hop this golf talk across the pond a little bit, and want to give a shout out to our boy Patrick Reed. One of the most improbable rounds, and maybe it's tough to say because it was a par 70 versus a 72, which is your standard, but he had maybe the perfect round of golf. And I remember back in the day when I was really into golf self-help books and actually reading them. I think there was a book called 54 is Possible, or maybe it was a concept. I don't know if it was a book, but basically saying that, when we, like our old home course that we worked at and have been at since we were 12 years old, we've birdied every single hole on that course at one point. At one point or another, I've birdied all 18 holes. So have you. I've eagled, I think 7 or 8 of them. You've probably more than that with a couple hole-in-ones or a hole-in-one out there. So 54 is possible is basically just saying that you can birdie every single hole. It just doesn't feel like it can happen back to back to back. But Patrick Reed shot 59 on the Asian Tour. And that's not, there's 59s out there all the time. Not all the time, but a fair amount, especially on a course that's apparently 6,500 yards in par 70, which I'll get to somebody's pissant comment after this. But he hit every single fairway and every single green. Didn't make any eagles, made a bunch of birdies, obviously 11 of them, and had 25 putts. So is that did Patrick Reed shoot the perfect round of golf? As perfect as a human can shoot it?
No, I mean, there's been lower scores. So I think ultimately it comes down to the score. Like the lowest score ever is the best round of golf ever, the perfect. And I truly don't believe there's ever been a perfect round of golf unless somebody, and I don't know if it's possible. I guess technically it is, like you said, but unless somebody hits every fairway, every green, and one putts every single hole, like that is, I don't even know if there's an equivalent like that out there in sports, like in any other sport, because that is one of the craziest things to possibly think about ever. So I don't think that was the perfect round. Definitely a great round. Don't get me wrong. And it's honestly, if I remember correctly, it's Patrick Reed's first win since he joined Live. So I think it's been over 3 years since he's won anywhere, and he had to go to the Asian Tour to get it. But I think he shot like 64, 65, 59, and then 66. So played pretty damn good golf. Got to give him credit. But no, definitely not a perfect round by any means.
Somebody said, responded to the tweet and said, I'm not thrilled. There were 30 players 65 or under, including those ranked 900 or worse, 6,700 yards, par 70. Still has to have an asterisk. Bet if more Corn Ferry or PGA Tour players there would have been a few more IMO. And I kind of want to push back on you saying score. So do you think in terms of just a score, if somebody would have shot 58 and made 10 birdies, 2 eagles, and 2 bogeys, that's a better round than Patrick Reed's 59, where he didn't miss a single fairway or a single green?
I mean, if the score is lower, then yeah, I think it's a better round. Like that is golf. I feel like the more you play it, the more you realize that there's a lot of people that look a lot better than they are at golf, and there's a lot of people that are a lot worse than they look at golf. So I think ultimately getting the ball in the hole in the fewest amount of strokes. Sure, from an aesthetic standpoint, it's nice to go bogey free, have no bogeys on the card, but ultimately, no matter how you get it done, that's what really I care about. I don't ask how, I ask how many, along with the rest of the golf world. So there's definitely an aesthetic part. Like, have you ever gone bogey free before?
No. What kind of dumb question is that?
I
On 9 holes, yeah.
Do you remember the one time? I think my only bogey free round may have been with you, and you and I went out. I was like 19. You and I went out at our old course when, like, first thing in the morning, and I shot like 68 and didn't make a bogey.
I don't remember. I know I've made a bogey every more than 9-hole round I've stepped on the golf course. I'm pretty positive of it. At
Okay.
least at
Yeah.
least
I mean,
one, maybe two.
being bogey free is wild, but there's also a bit of pressure that comes along with it if you're thinking about it, because there is something relieving about bogeying the first hole. Let's just be real. You kind of get that monkey off your back right off the jump, and then it almost feels like you're able to be more aggressive, like kind of get your momentum going. Whereas if you make par on one, or God forbid birdie on one, making a birdie on one feels like a death sentence for a round of golf. So yeah, there's being bogey free is definitely pretty damn cool, and it feels pretty mistake free. But there's a certain amount of pressure around it where you think about it until you make one, and then it's just no longer a thought in your head.
100%. All right, before we get to our Mulligan Monday, want to give a quick shout out to last topic of the day, Elvis Smiley in the Australian PGA Championship. He holds off guys like Cameron Smith and Mark Leishman. He's 22 years old, just missed his tour card a month ago by one shot, and then he goes out and wins the Australian Open, or Australian PGA Championship, excuse me. 22 years old, like I said, he was one of the players to receive the Cameron Smith Scholarship in 2019, and then he goes and beats him in a tournament, which Cameron Smith's already won 3 times. So it's always a cool feeling for a younger kid to win a tournament, especially when there's pros in it. But in Australia, when you've received the scholarship from Cam Smith to continue playing golf, and then you go out and beat him in an event he's won 3 times and is basically the king of, that's got to be a cool feeling.
Yeah, and what an all-time name. I mean, Elvis Smiley, that is just all-time good. I think he's definitely an Australian or a New Zealander, one of the two. But yeah, the Australian PGA and any event they play in Australia is always an awesome watch. There's some of the best golf courses in the world are down in Australia, so the golf never disappoints, and it's always firm and fast. Now, I say it's firm and fast. I think it rained a lot this week down in Australia, so challenging conditions, but good on him for bouncing back. Like you said, misses his card and then just comes out and wins the Australian PGA to earn his card. So the game of golf just keeps getting younger and better, and it's kind of scary. Like where does it stop? Kind of similar to the money thing, like we talked about. Is there going to eventually be a 14-year-old that wins on the PGA Tour? Like, what is too young? You know?
Yeah. What point does it get to? All right. Let's finish up this episode of Big Drive Energy with our favorite topic, or our favorite segment is the word I'm looking for. Mulligan of the week. I'll start out with my Mulligan of the week. It ended up being really fun, but I planned a play date / story time this past weekend during the middle of an Iowa football game. Kind of wish I could have it back and just flip it to another weekend. There's only so many weekends of college football. Like I said, I ended up having a really good time, made it home for the middle, the third, and the fourth quarter. Got to see our boys win, but yeah, I was just kind of sitting there as this lady's singing, or they're playing Duck, Duck, Goose or something, and I'm wondering if Iowa's kicking another field goal or scoring a touchdown. So kind of an L on my part. Turned out to be okay, but not. I'm going to check the schedule a little more tightly next time before I plan these kind of things.
Yeah, you definitely can't be that guy that misses football because he's got a family. That's just it's not in your repertoire. Football is something that you don't pass up. So my mulligan of the week, first of all, I wrote this. So I kind of I try to write down my mulligans of the week, but I wrote this one at 12:15 Saturday morning, so Friday night, and I was clearly intoxicated because I just wrote mulligan of the week, brushing your teeth in the bathroom, and that was it. So I forget what I did brushing my teeth in the bathroom at 12:30 in the morning, but clearly I was not in the right place to finish that sentence, so I just fucking left her there. But if I actually had to pick one, it would be just all the Italian food I've eaten these last few days, and just it's that time of year again where you just eat so bad, and it's so hard to not eat bad. And then fucking Costco's got these sweets. Oh yeah, this is pretty much it. This leads me to my topic. Have you ever had zebra popcorn?
Yeah.
Oh my God, dude. That's like, it's on my death row, like meal list now. It is so fucking good. And they're selling at Costco. I bought a bag, and every time I go in the cabinet, I have to eat zebra corn. Like fucking, it's just the best, one of the best things I've ever had. So, I fucking hate myself.
Well, that's a great way to finish up this episode of Big Drive Energy. Make sure you're following us on all the socials at Big Drive Energy on TikTok and Twitter, Big Drive Energy Golf on Instagram. Hope you have a great rest of your week. Enjoy all the fall and Christmassy things that are going on. Thanksgiving this week. Have a great Thanksgiving with your family, football, food, family, the 3 Fs. Follow those rules. We'll talk to you guys next week. Happy holidays. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.